Yeah, so I would like to take you onto a problem framing journey. The reason why I suggested this is because I found this is the most crucial step towards an impactful innovation. I'm also, and I'm very attached to it, generally speaking. So be it in whether you're in a very specific industrial environment or on something broader, social environment, social enterprise, or whatever. I found whatever is your context, a good problem is what makes a difference. Yeah, so I want to introduce myself because I think you did that beautifully already. So why is framing a problem such a crucial step? Why is it the foundation of your entire innovation process? I think because first it's about defining the boundaries of what you want to solve. So very often when people are confused, when you hesitate and you have the feeling you're not maybe on the right route, or you're doubting, very often it's because it lacks of clarity. And the boundaries are not so clear. The boundaries of what you're trying to achieve are not so clear. So it's about clarifying your objectives, having a thorough understanding of your problem and context, having your goals very precise. And this has to be spelled out, like very explicit. I think when you're not explicit, it's because there is something fishy underneath. You have to address this thing. And also because it sets the ground very well for creativity. When you have a clear question to ask even just yourself or your team, this is what sets everyone for creativity. If already the question is not clear, then everybody will have their own understanding of the question, and then it will go all over the place. So you really have to have this clear question to ask. So be it for your overall problem, like what you're trying to target as an entrepreneur, or is it a sub-problem, like something maybe you're already advanced in your journey, or you're already a successful CEO of a company, but you might have a new directions you want to take, or difficulties that arose and you have to address. So whatever stage you're in, when you have a difficulty or something to address, this will apply to any case. So yeah, and a well-defined problem also opens up the room for exploration. And also one thing which is very important, which I'll speak about today, is bias. So very often we have bias. So we are biased about what's obvious, about even so what's a desirable state, what is the current state about. So we carry so many bias with us. So like very often, for example, a CEO, like you work in a company, and so you're aware of all the practical problems. And then your CEO or your head comes and say, oh, but no, we're going to do that because we have that problem. And this problem doesn't correspond at all to your reality. Everybody's convinced they know the problem they want to address, but they all have their own perspective. So that's a bias as well. So by spelling it out, by having a well-defined problem with explicit definition of everything, it helps avoid bias. And also it allows for a proper evaluation of potential solutions. So why that? Because when you have once you have your problem written somewhere, you can always refer to it as you move forward, because very often what happens is when you work towards a solution, so you explore, and so you have different ideas that come up. And with each idea, then the one takes you to another, and then another, and sometimes you can go quite far apart from your initial goals. So it's very important to have it written so that you can go back to it and adjust. So maybe you're right, maybe you were right to take that route, but at least be aware that then you have to reframe your problem. And then that's no longer this initial problem that you want to solve, but that one. And because of a well-informed decision, because you did your research and in the end you realize, which is perfect, it's great, but it's important to be aware and also to evaluate, you know, like to know properly what you want to do and if it's the right thing to do. Okay, so this is to motivate. I hope by now you're super motivated to have a very, very rigorously defined problem. Feel free to interrupt me. I would like this session to be interactive because it's not theoretical. I don't want it. It's actually absolutely not theoretical. Okay, it has to be super practical. And I want this to resonate with your own context. So feel free to interrupt me if you need clarity on any of the things I mentioned at any time. Okay. Wait, I'm stuck. Yeah, this is good. But so there is this well-known saying from this very well-known professor, Einstein. So he said, if I had 1 hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes diagnosing the problem and then 5 minutes to solve it. I love this saying because it's I'm so convinced about it. That's why I'm on a journey to spread the word. And actually, so my background is in mathematics, and that's how I came to it. So I was working on applied math, so obsessed with problem framing, because that's how you start your journey to innovate. And then I realized that in the private sphere, very often when people are disappointed by the solution, it's actually because they didn't have a good problem to work on in the first place. Because people always want to rush to solution. They find like, you know, they're too eager and they have the feeling that working on the problem is a waste of time. So one of my goals here is to demonstrate that it's absolutely not a waste of time. And on the contrary, it's a gain of time. To reframe, so as you go in your journey, to reframe constantly, to make sure your question is good and matches what you want to achieve and what you've identified in your research, by constantly being in touch with the people you design for, the people who want to solve for, your target population, let's call it like that way. This is a key to success. So I want to highlight also the fact that this problem, I mean, this talk on problem framing is not necessarily linked to any methodology, but I'm also an adept of design thinking. So it's a very good fit as a start for the design thinking journey, or any other method that you might want to apply. But the beauty of the design thinking journey, in particular for social entrepreneurs, is that it's human-centered. So it really focuses on the people at the target population. And why is that key? Because if you solve for them, you want to hear what is their reality. You know, like in any problem-solving approach, I think it's important. It's key to capture the problem from all perspectives. And in design thinking, that's what we do too. But in particular, from the, like, we have to understand the problem from the people at the core of the problem. Yeah, and so again, the quality of the solutions we come up with is in direct proportion to the quality of the description of the problem, your problem statement. I would like to take a few examples. What is a good problem statement? And in some of the successful enterprise that you have around, you can see clearly sometimes that the problem was well framed or not. So for example, M-Pesa, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It was very clear that's a very successful innovation, like disrupting. But it was, it all started with a very well-framed problem, which was how can we provide a secure and efficient way for people in underserved areas to access financial services and transfer money. Okay, so their response, M-Pesa in Kenya, addressed this problem by leveraging mobile technology for digital payments and money transfers, thus empowering millions of unbanked individuals. So that was a major, like it was a revolution in the financial space, I think. And since then, a lot of other systems were created. But that was really a revolution. And I think because they managed to capture the need very well, very precisely, and address it, thinking about all the different aspects of an individual's journey in the underserved areas. Another example is from Sproxil. So clearly for there, the problems I identified was how can we combat counterfeit medications in developing countries to ensure patients receive genuine and safe pharmaceuticals. Okay, very important problem in health. And so they developed a solution to allow consumers to verify the authenticity of their medicines using mobile phones. Okay, so that was also a great example for a very well-defined problem. You can see how well the solution matches the problem. Okay, and I would like to give you another example of what happens when problems are not as well defined, so a bit more poorly framed. Not to condemn PlayPump, which is a great initiative apart from that, but just to highlight what the difficulties might be, because it's still successful, but there are limits to it. So how can we provide clean water? The problem that they clearly addressed was how can we provide clean water to rural communities while also promoting physical activity among children? Okay, so they installed installed water pumps that children could spin like merry-go-rounds to draw water from underground wells. So that was very smart. I love that idea. But the limits came from the fact that they didn't anticipate the fact that they would need maintenance, they would need the involvement from the community. Otherwise, the pumps are just left to abandoned. And that happens often. So that's why design thinking is very powerful in the social space, because it's all based on obtaining the people buy-in. If you have the buy-in from the people, then it's a win, because they will always try it. They will really believe that it's in their interest to make it sustainable and to take care of the solution. Okay, so if there are other problems to work on, you have to hear from your design population to make sure you go around that problem. For example, in that case, if they had included their community more, they would have talked about the maintenance as well and all the technicalities. Okay, so with a better problem, you have a better solution. That's what I'm trying to say here. And I'd like to encourage you to refrain from jumping to solution too quickly, to frame and reframe your challenge as often as possible, and to try to capture the problem holistically, like from all the different stakeholders' lens. So how do we do that? So you have to start by questioning the question. So always question the question. So first try to write a question down, and then ask yourself again to try to see if there is not more to it. Identify the root cause of the problem. It's very important. Otherwise, it will remain too superficial. Understand the problem holistically, as I just mentioned, is key. Explore from different perspectives, it goes with it. And also challenge the limitations. Make sure to identify all the assumptions, your bias, what are the constraints. Try to capture all the dimensions of the problem. Okay, so yeah, about the bias, what we said, so it's something that I found people do very often, is they get confused between the objectives and feasibility. So very often, people don't explore something. They don't even want to consider a route because they have a preconception that this won't be feasible. So you limit yourself a lot by doing that. So it's very, very important not to get confused between objectives and feasibility. Feasibility, when you write your problem, it's not the right time to think about feasibility. Feasibility will come much later in the process. Otherwise, you limit yourself too much in your exploration. So you have to be aware of your beliefs, the belief of what's feasible, to try to be very rational and rigorous in breaking down your objective, what you want to achieve, as opposed to the current state and what you believe is feasible. So it requires a lot of rigor and discipline to do that. To differentiate also between the problem and the means. Okay, so now, are you solving the right problem in your sphere? So we try to capture with the help of ADME, we try to ask you a little bit before, what are your current problems? So whether it's for your whole entrepreneurship journey or within your business, if you can think about a problem, it will help during that workshop to try to apply the learnings directly on a problem. So I would like to give you first quickly, what is a good problem? Because you might ask yourself, what is a good problem statement? So we try to capture we try to put together a checklist to help you identify whether your problem statement is a good problem. So a good problem has to capture the context of your problem. Okay, what is the current state? The context. It has to specify who you're solving for. So to capture the people affected by the challenge. That's what we do, in particular in design thinking, but in whatever method you want to apply, you have to know for who you want to solve that problem. It has to capture why it matters to the people. Why is it important? It has to be solution-free. So this, let me explain, because that's not easy to understand. So solution-free meaning you have to make sure that in your problem statement, there is not already a solution which is maybe implicit. And this, you will be surprised, very often, most of the time, the solution is within the problem statement. So it doesn't open up the space enough. Okay, you have to make sure that there is not a solution which is implicit in your problem statement. And it has to be not too narrow, not too broad. And this is because if you have a problem which is too narrow, it's too straightforward. Meaning, so most of the time, if it's too narrow, the solution is actually included in your problem. You just have to do it. There is no room for creativity and exploration, really. And if it's too broad, like, for example, straight away you want to solve for a nationwide or worldwide problem, or it means that probably you have a number of different problems within that problem. And so you have to break it down so that you solve step by step, one problem at a time. Okay, so you have to bear in mind that another way also to see that, in particular in design thinking, is because you want to solve for the people that are, you identify your design population, And you want to access those people, to be able to interact with them, because you need to do your research and know from their perspective, what does the problem look like? And so you need to secure access to your design population. And for that, if it's too broad, it's unlikely that you will secure access. I don't know if that makes sense. So how do we define a good problem? So first of all, you have to do your research. You have to capture your problem from all perspectives, to immerse yourself in different people's environment, to understand the root cause of the problem, to understand it thoroughly. You have to raise questions, to identify the implicit assumptions you're making, to challenge your assumptions, to try to check with the different stakeholders whether your assumptions are correct. Make sure you're not biased. You have to identify your key factors of your problem. So like, what are the constraints, the true constraints? Because sometimes you believe you have some constraints which are actually not constraints. What are some parameters? What are the interdependencies between the factors? And then you're ready to frame or reframe. Okay, to define your problem statement, to make sure it's simple enough so that you can explain it quickly to anyone, and break it down if needed. Okay, so it's about, so it starts by grasping the context thoroughly and from different perspectives. So yeah, who are the stakeholders, who is the design population, and so you have a number of methods that you can apply. I will at the end of this workshop, I'll share some templates with you. You can do your secondary research. Interviews are very important. Questionnaires, to always check with people whether you're on the right track or not, or whether you've captured the problem well. Have you identified your design population well? What are the personas, so the typical profiles of the person you want to solve for? Empathy maps is very much used in design thinking, but I really encourage you to consider this anyway, because it helps capturing. Wait, let me see. This is the empathy map. So it's an example of empathy map canvas. You see, so you really put yourself in the shoes of one persona, one typical person from your design population, and you try to see what they see, hear what they hear, say what they would say typically, what do they do, what have they observed. Yeah, in the white space, you have all the current status, so what they feel like, what are their pains and their gains and all that. And in the gray area is where you want to, where are you heading to? So what's your goal? What are their goals? Okay, so that you really solve for them. Okay, so that's just an example. Yeah, just to say, you have a number of templates that can help you actually do that work. In design thinking, so it's human-centered, as I mentioned, but it's a very collaborative approach. And it's based on 3 criteria to evaluate your solutions in design thinking. It's viability, feasibility, and desirability. So for your design population, is the solution viable? So for example, going back to the pump, the water pump we talked about, is it viable? So if you involve your design population in the design process, it will help you make sure it's viable, because you will see with them whether they're going to maintain this solution. Do they know how to? Can they do it? Feasible, of course. Desirable, so checking against the design population. Is it desirable? Because you have to address their own goals. Okay, just to give you a little overview of the design thinking process and the design thinking journey. So it's an iterative process where you go repeatedly from one step to another as needed, but it's generally starts with empathizing and doing all your research. Then you define your problem statement. Once you have a clear definition of your problem, you're ready to ideate, brainstorm, open up to ideas. And once you have a clear concept in terms of ideas, then you're ready to prototype. And with your prototype, you're going to test and reach out to your design population. And then empathy again. Try to ask them, how do they feel about the solution you're trying to adapt, to implement, so that you can adjust your prototype as needed. And then always present your solution, work hand in hand with your design population to make sure that your solution is desirable, viable, and feasible. Okay, now let's speak about you. So thanks to the questionnaire you responded to initially when you registered, I think ASEW captured a number of keywords which corresponds to the problems that you articulated. Okay, but these are just keywords. So I would like now, in light of what we just explained, if we're just at the beginning for now, I would like each of you individually, to reflect on your own venture or whatever problem you're facing at the moment, whether it's the big problem, the big picture, or sub problems that you're facing, and try to write your problem statement. And then we'll share it with everyone and try to have a discussion and see where we might need clarity. The importance of let me go quickly. So we have to diverge before converging. So before having your proper definition of your problem, you need to allow for exploration. I will never insist enough on that. Okay, so I hope this is clear. But now, how do you reframe? Because once you have your context description, you need to be able to reframe. So these are some very useful techniques to help you. That's what I wanted to do as a group activity, is to try to apply some technique to help you raise good questions. Okay, a bit like what we've started doing. So there is 5 W's, for example. The 5 W's is a method, a quick method. It's like a game that you play with a few people around you to ask who, what, when, where, and why. Who does the problem affect? What are the boundaries? What is the impact of the issue? When does the issue occur? Or when does it need to be fixed? Where is the issue occurring? Why is it important that we fix the problem? All these questions, okay? You ask all these questions in a team regarding one problem that you define, like, for example, one of the questions that you just wrote on the chat. You take this question and then you raise all these questions and you make sure they reflect in your problem statement. Otherwise, you adjust accordingly. Another method is the 5 whys. So it's a bit similar, but instead of asking who, what, where, when, you ask why 5 times in a row. It sounds very irritating. It is. It's a bit like the kids, the child, they ask, why, but why? But you do that, and you will see how efficient it is to reveal the missed aspect, the hidden objectives. Okay? So it's very good to determine the root cause of a problem and to identify the true objective. So I really encourage you all to use the 5 whys. Remember that what is framed is what you see. Your perception is only a portion of the reality. Another method is called the angel's advocate. Okay, so this is, we all do that in conversation often, in a dinner. It's to change the representation you have of a result. Okay, so it requires a lot of mental flexibility. You change posture. And bear in mind that there is no objective success or failure. It all depends on your posture. It all depends on your posture, sorry. Okay, so it's a way you look at things. For example, if I say I failed matric, but you can say, I'm not worried I'll be majoring next year. oh, that's fine. Next year I will learn faster and I'll have more time for sports, music. That will be great. Or, oh no, but of course, exams works with a quota. So I left a space for a lucky one that needed more than me. Or you can say, oh, when I'll be 60 years old, what importance will it make that I pass metric at 42 or 41 years? 42 or 41 years ago. Okay, so you can see you can adopt so many different postures, and when you do that, it forces you to respond to a number of hidden variables and spell things out. You know, make it explicit. Another approach is the Martian. Another technique is the technique of the Martian. So it's someone, you know, the Martian has no idea of what human behavior is about, the way humans are organized, what is the man, why does he get dressed, how does he live, etc. So this is great to force you to be explicit because there is no obvious statement, okay? And also the Martian is capable to be surprised. Everything surprises him. So he asks questions. He is capable to ask a lot of questions. And this is crucial to be able to really identify the nitty-gritty of what you're trying to say. Okay? The Martian technique is also called the technique of the intern, because when you're new in a company, very often there are big innovations that arise. Like, for example, in that big popular beer company, one intern arrived and asked, but why are these barrels transported lying down? Yeah, but we've done like that for the past 100 years. And all goes well, no problems with it. Why are you asking? Oh, well, just because standing, you could place 4 instead of 3, and and that was 2 million euros savings. Imagine. Okay, it sounds silly, but that's a true story. Okay, guidelines in terms of how to write a good question. So you have to make sure to be very clear, concise, and focused problem statement. So this is a template that can help you. For example, you can try to write it like this as a question. So given that, no, how might we help? Then you say, so given that, explain the context. How might we help? Describe the design population. Do or achieve or feel, and explain your immediate goal. So they can, and explain your deeper goal. Okay? If you try to write it like this, most of the time it may sound a bit tedious and a long statement, but then you capture it all, and it helps really articulating a good problem statement. So there is, but I think we won't have time, but so I wanted you to now. Okay, so just 5 takeaways to optimize efficiency and decision making, because this is key. Problem framing is also key for decision making, your strategic decisions. If you know well what you're trying to solve, you make the right decisions. So to refrain from rushing to a solution, be explicit. To ask questions, always ask questions, even naive questions. Challenge assumptions. Okay, so first of all, make them explicit, and then ask yourself whether it's correct or not. And be rigorous and conscious. Okay, thank you so much.